Welcome to episode 1 of Tool Use. With me as always is Fiero, and I'm Mike Bird. We have a weekly conversation around the latest AI tooling and how you can use it in your life by producing practical examples and projects with it. We also cover some of the AI news that didn't make the headlines, but we feel you should know about it. This week, we're going to be discussing web scraping. Ty, tell us about web scraping.
Okay, so web scraping is basically plundering the internet to train giant language models to replace us. Nope, just kidding. But web scraping is actually taking useful information from websites to do cool things with it. And so how it's using AI right now is a little bit perhaps controversial. But, image AI startups like Midjourney and whatever else scrape the internet of all of the images so that they can use those to train their own models. There's even NVIDIA's in hot water right now for scraping YouTube and scraping all sorts of different video platforms for their own video creation model. And then, of course, ChatGPT, GPT-3 is trained on the pile, and the pile was this data set that was a gigantic web scraped set of pretty much everything on the internet. What's most exciting to you about web scraping?
I view it as kind of like the consolidation of knowledge. If I'm going to spend some time going through DuckDuckGo, finding different results, and just making notes as I research a topic, it's very time intensive. Web scraping, you can kind of offload a lot of that to let the robots take care of it for you. And then, it's kind of what you do with it where I think is the ethical dilemma. One note on the pile, I heard it used to be no one really cared about what was in it until people started making billions of dollars with it. Then all of a sudden you had companies going through with a fine-tooth comb being like, oh, there's a bit of copyright material in here, can't use it. So a lot of the open source AI initiatives are actually struggling for the data they can use, because when you're a big company, you got a team of lawyers, you can really stand up for yourself in these situations. But these small nonprofit labs, as soon as they're threatened with a lawsuit, they have to just pull the plug. So a lot of labs, and even university research labs, are struggling to release the content they want to, even though they're team open source and they want to put it out there because of threat of legal liability. So not for this episode, but in the future, I think we should definitely look into how we can, as a community, come together and start creating robust data sets that are truly user generated, completely copyright free, because of web scraping creating these large data sets which have been widely used. We just don't know what's in there, and it's tough. So I like using web scraping to expedite the process of research, and I think that'll tie into my demo today. But in general, use it for ethical things, and I don't think you have a concern.
Totally makes sense. That would make a great episode at some point, doing data collection. I'd love to write a script or something to record everything I'm doing on my computer and train a model to be like me or something. There's some cool ideas that we could do there.
Yeah, add it to the list.
Okay, deal. It's on the list. All right. Well, I guess I can show off my demo first here. You went first last week, so I'll jump right in here and kind of show you what I got. All right, for my demo this week, I played with Exa AI, which is a really interesting LLM platform for scraping data on websites and kind of just generally getting information off the internet. So I made this little demo. I'm actually just going to run it and kind of explain it as it runs. Okay, so first step I did is actually use DSPy to optimize the user query. So the user query right now is give me the hottest startups from 2024. And then it's going to actually make a better user query that takes that information and expands upon it. And then I have a summarizer prompt that's from DSPy that's going to take this optimized user prompt, and then it's going to take that, optimize it further so that we have a really good summarization prompt that we can use later. So now this is actually a prompt we can use there. And then I pass this into Exa. So I'm actually passing in the user query, and I'm passing in a summarizer prompt into Exa, because Exa has a built-in summarizer, which I think is fantastic. So we'll go look at a particular website, take the information from it, and then you can do things like highlights. It'll take a highlight off the website, the top thing. It can also just get you the text of the website, it can get you the title of the website, or it can get you a full summary of the whole page. And you can pass a custom prompt into the summarizer of this, and it gets you some pretty interesting things. So here I have some Exa responses. Here's response 1. This article highlights the most promising startups. Talks about Adept and AlphaSense and some of these other ones. And then I did this other thing. So once I get this Exa response, I'm actually going to use Anthropic to generate a likely user query that would have resulted in this. And so without actually having a user query there, it's going to take this and work backwards and be like, okay, they probably asked this to get to this answer. And then I run this again. And then here's a Twitter post. What's the current state of venture capital? So it's actually making a user and assistant on each one of them. Here it keeps going. Yeah, so this just keeps going. So I have in my code just like an end value to see how many responses you actually want to get back. I set mine to 5 currently, but yeah, it's making a response, it's making a user query, and then at the end of all of this, we generate a likely system prompt. So we actually put into the context window of Anthropic 3 results. One, and it's formatted in like OpenAI format to where you have like role, user, content, these, and then we have role, assistant, content, this. I passed that into a prompt for Anthropic that's like, given this conversation between a human and assistant, what is the likely system prompt that would have resulted out of all of this? And it actually generates a system prompt. And so you're an AI expert specializing in startup and venture capital trends, provide informative responses, yada, yada, yada. And then I set this up to actually take all of this information and create JSON-L files. So we actually can create a JSON-L, and it makes a whole training data set. So now we have JSON-L training data. Took about 25 seconds to do 5 results. 5 results is nowhere near what you really need to make a really good model. But we can actually see here that we have a training data JSON-L. And this has the format you would need to fine-tune a model. And then what I can actually do is I can go into OpenPipe. I can make a new fine-tune. Let's see here. I don't really like the name of that. Let's just call it Exa here. Let's do, yeah, sure, Llama 3.1. Actually, I kind of want Mistral. That sounds more fun to me. And then I can, I need to add a new data set. Oh, okay, wait, hold on. I got to go back and add a data set. Data set, new data set. And then I can upload data, which is my most recent one. This is only 5 examples. This is a terrible fine tune. Do not try this at home. You should go make at least probably 100 to 1,000 examples just to even get anything close to a good model. But we're going to make one on 5 examples anyway, just because it's fun here. Okay, August 17th. I'll just call this Exa base model. I want Mistral. Insufficient. Oh, I need at least 10. Okay, well, I'll show you. I have this data set from yesterday that I had, which is 50 samples. And I'll just start training that. And then I'll just start training. I think this took about maybe like 10 minutes to train. And it also cost me about like 30 cents to make my own model that has this information on it. Probably a little more expensive if you had 1,000, but I bet it's actually not that much more. It's probably like $6 to train your own model. And then I can actually, I will show you what I have over, oh, wrong one. And go here, let's clear this out. And I actually have, I can call my fine tune that I actually have. So this is just calling the fine tune that's hosted in OpenPipe. So I asked it something like, what are the top startups? And then there's some playing around in here that needs to happen. It's not like I don't want this response to say this website. Ideally, this would just like come back with a essentially hallucinated AI startup. And so you can come up with cool startup ideas. That was the idea here. Couldn't quite get the messaging on it quite right. But yeah, we have our own custom model living on OpenPipe because they make it super easy. And now we have a model we can call however we want to. And that's kind of the whole thing here, but I can walk through some of my code just a little bit to show you kind of how things are working. Let's see here, we got XAI. So I like having all of my changeable variables at the top. So here's our provider. This works with OLAM as well, so it can be fully local. Not quite as impressive. You can also play with OpenAI. I actually found that OpenAI has slightly better results than Anthropic, which made me kind of sad because I love Anthropic, but is what it is. I still chose Anthropic because it's a hill I'll die on. And then you can specify your search query here. This could be anything. I had this yesterday of like, what are some fun facts? And it would go through and find a bunch of websites for fun facts, pull the fun facts out of them, and then use those as responses. So you could even make a fine-tuned Mistral model that all it does is just hallucinate fun facts for you, which sounds fun to me, at least. I don't know how useful that is, but you can imagine actually doing useful things with this too. I mean, you could have this scrape different websites, and maybe it's like, I don't know, company profiles, or there's all sorts of things you could do with this. I mean, the internet's full of interesting information. Why not scrape that information, throw it into a model, and have it yourself? So, but yeah, you can specify your models here. This is where you specify the results. I mean, and ideally, you'd set this to like 10,000. But I am not made of money, so I did 5 for today. I'm not here to train the next huge model. And then we just set up Exa, and props to Exa, they made this easy. They have an API playground online where you just like can specify a couple things, and they don't just give you the curl request or like the API call. They're like, here's the Python code, just copy and paste, and it just worked, just out of the box. No fussing around with it, which is incredible. But yeah, so I have a LLM response, and I just kind of set this up to have a cheap model and a state-of-the-art model. For the cheap model, after every result that comes out, I want to use a cheap model instead of a state-of-the-art because that would get really expensive. But I have the state-of-the-art make the system prompt and some of these other different things just for quality's sake. But yeah, we just have some DSPy signatures here, create the user query. I love DSPy. It's super easy to do this. I mean, look how simple this is. You just specify your meta prompt. You specify a user field in your optimized prompt, and you have like a forward function, and it just returns the prompt. It's super straightforward. Did the same thing for the search prompt, so it kind of just does all that. Here's just the optimizer, and this is actually interesting too for DSPy is you can actually provide examples to this. And so I have this optimizer here, right? So I have the meta prompts and the different inputs that go into it, and then we just provide a list of examples of like, okay, this is a good example. I actually hand wrote this one. And then this is a prompt that should lead to this output. And then we have to supply the input here. And then here's another one. This is about apple pie recipes, which is a weird theme that keeps recurring on this podcast for some reason. But so you actually have these examples here, and then you can do this thing called bootstrap view shot. And so it's a thing called teleprompter. The thing I don't like about DSPy is their naming of things. I wish they made it a little bit more interesting. That should just be like an optimizer. But anyway, kind of goes through this, and it creates these prompts based on the examples and based off of your class you set up here. Anyway, I love DSPy. I'll talk about this all day long, but it makes some cool stuff there. And then this is literally all my Exa code. Like, props to them. Like, look how easy that is. That's, 11 lines of code? Search contents, pass in a search query, type neural, which uses RAG. So I'm sure they probably already have some results like cached or saved in a vector database. They actually have their own auto prompt too. So if you pass in a query, they're going to format the prompt in a way that makes sense for their system. Then you specify the number of results, you pass in the query, yada, yada, yada. This is an interesting one. This generate training data function is actually kind of useful. I think I'll use this in other projects now. Take any amount of data that has an AI assistant result and a user query, and you can generate a JSON-L file. Kind of just goes through here, adds the system prompt, whatever else, and then boom, you get a system prompt or a JSON-L file you can train a model with. And then it just kind of spits it out. But yes, so this is kind of everything that's going on here. Optimize user query, optimize a summary prompt, get your responses from Exa, generate your training data, and tell me how long it took. And then I just go right into OpenPipe. I tried actually to, OpenPipe does have an API, and they do have an API for fine tuning, but it's definitely in alpha, and I couldn't figure out how to upload a data set to it. I think you have to upload a data set to the web app and then specify that as a fine tune, which seems kind of weird to me. I wish they were able to upload a training set, fine tune a model, and then just all in the same thing, be able to call it from there. Would have made for a much better demo. Just from a single like 4-word user query to a custom model that you can talk to. Wild. I mean, these are the times we're living in. But yeah, I think that's everything I got.
Awesome, man. I really liked it. I think like another side effect of this, which is sweet, is not only do you get to fine tune a model on a more specific topic that you're wanting to focus on, but you're actually, because you're leveraging Exa, you can actually get past the training cutoff date and give it brand new information. So if you were to say scrape news articles, you can actually fine tune a model to be like up to date on what's going on with certain topics and not, knowledge cut off 8 months ago. So I think this has a bunch of downstream effects that would be really cool. And yeah, I'm glad you gave a shout out to the OpenPipe guys because they make really good stuff. But, user feedback like this is probably helpful. Some of their corporate brothers will reach out and...
I definitely reached out to them, and so I hope to see a better fine-tuning API. I mean, if you're actually going to make a model, it's going to cost you a bunch of money. You're probably not going to send that from your command line. You probably just want to go to the web app and actually just upload it. But I wish it was there. One interesting thing is actually Exa has on their website, they say that there's a whole service they provide for creating training data for language models. And what actually prompted this whole demo is the fact that you can't just get started with that. You have to talk to sales. And I was like, nah, I'm not talking to sales. I'm going to build it myself. And so I just took their service and kind of reverse engineered their actual training set generation pipeline. I'm sure theirs is probably more impressive than my 300-line Python file here, but hey, I'm using Exa, scraping the internet for results, and creating a custom Mistral model. Pretty wild.
Love it. Good job, man. That was awesome.
Thank you. All right, I think I'll pass the torch over to you.
I put together a research assistant. Like I mentioned earlier, I like the idea of being able to aggregate information in an easy way, just to save me time. So the goal was save 90% of the time that you're going to spend researching a topic. Not produce the output of like an essay or anything, but just get most of the way there. So Python research assistant. And now, like before, I can set the service. So I'll use Grok to keep it speedy. And then you enter in the research topic. So let's say migration pattern of puffins. And I have this set up where it'll actually export to the Obsidian Vault. So you can see I have a research directory. So within the research, let's create a directory called Puffin. And then you send it on its way. So it also uses Exa, but the purpose of Exa is to mostly just grab the results with small summaries. And then I feed it through Firecrawl. Now, Firecrawl is a service I use. I've been hosting it locally, but you can pay for their API, where it'll take a URL and intelligently scrape everything from the website. I did use Beautiful Soup to kind of clean it up a bit, but you can see here we get the Exa results, where it just gives you the link to it, the title, a little summary. But then we feed it into Firecrawl, where it gets the massive amount of data. Now, this itself is pretty useless. So what I'm doing is it'll generate individual summaries of each one. So it makes 6 AI calls for 6 results, and that is a configurable number. And then it creates a summary so you can enjoy the learning. So I open up your summary, and it'll have the migration patterns of Puffin, a comprehensive guide. And we have an executive summary, so just a couple sentences explaining what it is, some key concepts so you can understand the general gist. So if you're coming to a subject completely green, complete novice, you'll be able to understand a few definitions. Then we get a detailed outline. And then this is somewhat hard-coded, but I did give the LLM the ability to fluctuate a little bit in what it includes there. So we have some expert opinion consensus. Puffins are complex and influenced by various factors, including climate change, sea ice, and food availability. Cool. I tried to get to source. It did it unreliably, but I do include all of the Exa results at the end. So it gives you instructions for which you want to learn more, suggested learning path. So this is really just going to be the foundation to get started. And I was like, puffins are great, but let's say we want to do something a little more technical. So research assistant, once again, we'll use Grok, keep it quick. And then this can be long context LLMs versus RAG. Output can be LLMs, but I also added a technical flag. So anytime you have a technical subject that you want to research, you pass in this flag. Starts off the same, searches Exa, but instead of getting 6 results from Exa, it does 3, and then it searches archive. So archive is a collection of open source papers where they have an API that can get you like the link, the title, a summary, but it also included the ability to download the PDF, OCR, optical character recognition of the PDF, and takes all the contents there. So within LLMs, we have both the Exa results like before, but also the archive results. And then same process, it'll pass all 6 results through Firecrawl, generate the individual summaries, then generate the comprehensive learning material. Because this is also parsing the PDFs, it takes a little bit longer. But if you were to, say, read these papers yourself, this whole process is a single percent, less than 1% of the time you'd be spending to give you that foundational understanding. So check out the summary. Study of large context LLMs and RAG has gained sufficient attention in the field of NLP. And then I'll go through some key concepts again, some comparison studies, advantages and limitations to both, and then general expert opinion, some real examples. And once again, we include all of the summaries at the end. So this way you're able to get not only a AI generated summary of foundational knowledge for a given topic, but you're able to get sources so you can dive in and learn more. Because Cohere does a wonderful job with grounding, but if you want to use different services or build your own system, it is important to make sure that you actually link to proper materials. So with this using Grok, you can set up the service to use Ollama locally or Anthropic, because I agree Claude is 3.5 Sonnet is the top model right now for my results. You're able to have the versatility to work this into your system. Now, this is, it's good. I would say there's a lot of room for optimization for the prompts, but I spun this up relatively quickly, and then you can work with tools like DSPy to improve the prompts to actually increase the results. So you're able to automate researching a topic, so you don't have to ask someone to spend so much time going through Google results. You can actually just have the AI do it, send it back to you, feed this into deeper pipeline. Like I said, now this is in Obsidian, and if you pay attention to last week, we have Open Interpreter able to work in Obsidian, so maybe Open Interpreter could take some results from this summary and act upon it. So that's my demo.
Whew. You basically just built Perplexity. You gonna go raise your Series A round now, or what?
We'll do it. Tool use to the moon.
Wow, that's wild, man. That's crazy. I just absolutely love the fact that you keep making the demos work with Obsidian. Like, it's your... You didn't just print everything to the console and terminal. You're like, no, I'm gonna have everything print out in Obsidian in my custom vault. Like, this is knowledge. Like, you're building a knowledge base here, and Obsidian has all sorts of cool tools for that. You know, with linking different files between each other and creating links. You could even have another step here that just creates links. It goes through all the different files you went to and actually links things between the things. Then you can have that, what's that little view in Obsidian that shows you all of the
the graph view,
stuff?
I believe.
Graph view, yeah. I mean, look at that. That's wild. I mean, you just did that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If we do better and also this, like Firecrawl results, this was just an artifact to help with testing. You don't need this. You can just get the results if you want the grounded truth and then your summary, or you can just spit out the summary. Rename it something more appropriate instead of just summary. Say, like, this is actually like LLMs versus RAG. Or sorry, long context versus RAG. This is puffin stuff. And then your graph, you will be able to connect different bits of information together and potentially connect it to your internal knowledge base or whatever. So I think using a single common knowledge base store is going to be immensely valuable. So I do intend on making a lot of my tools working with it.
Incredible, man. That's impressive. You know, in like UFC fights where at the very end they have the two people there, then they raise one of the hands for the winner. I think you won this week. I'll beat you next week, but I think your demo blows mine out of the water. That is crazy.
Man, I think using these together will be sweet, because once we start building up a model that we can point our research assistant at that is trained on a certain topic, I don't know. I think incorporating EXA into these tools just makes them so powerful. I want to touch on Firecrawl quickly because I kind of glossed over it. Firecrawl is a service where I have it running self-hosted for free on my local machine. You can pay for their API, or you can put it up in a server. But what Firecrawl's cool is not only can you use the scraping functionality like I did, where you give it a URL that EXA captures, and then it'll scrape all the content. You can set off to crawl, where it actually start a job, and then it goes to the URL you give it, and then it'll actually also hunt down the subdomains to scrape as well. So if you give it example.com to the crawl method, it'll give you the results for that page, plus like the /about us, /contact us, /blog. So you can actually get it to really go down deeper and capture more information. So if we were to take this research assistant and give it the ability to crawl instead of just scrape, it might be able to find more details deeper down, try to make different associations. So I think this is a great starting point. But and this will be up on my GitHub for free. People can take it, play with it, make their own businesses around it. But the ability for it to go even deeper into knowledge and create more abstract connections will be very interesting to see.
Yeah, wow. That's really cool. I mean, we should definitely use this on the podcast in future episodes to research topics. I bet you could even just ask it, like, best podcast themes for an AI themed podcast. And it would go off and make a bunch of research and come up with some cool ideas for us. That's awesome. Wow. Sweet. Firecrawl and EXA. I'm impressed. I went on EXA's website initially and I was like, all right, here's the sales pitch. All right, sure. But then you actually play with it and try it and read the documentation, and it's like, oh, okay, I see what where the value is here. It's actually
Yeah.
really crazy.
Yeah. And I hope more open source people enter the space, but I mean, X has not been expensive for me, so I've been very happy with it so far. All right, Ty, what did we miss in AI news this week?
Okay, so I thought Anthropic, their release this week was absolutely insane. I think it's absolutely crazy. And this Alex Albert guy is honestly just one of the best like community managers I've ever seen. But anyway, the prompt caching in the Anthropic API I think is so much bigger than people really think it is. Like dropping API cost by 90%, and look, 2 lines of code. You literally just add cache control and you add a couple extra headers. The first time you send it, it's like slightly more expensive, I think, by a couple cents, and then it's cached that context. And then you can send whatever you want to it. And so, I mean, here's the pricing, whatever else. He even made an interactive cost savings artifact, which I think is such a brilliant idea too. Super cool. I mean, look at this. Your system instructions grounding data, and actually shows you your savings. Like, look at that, $46 versus $320. Wild. I mean, this also like saves the planet, right? We're using less electricity. There's less cost here. I just think it's way bigger than people give it credit for. And it's also so easy to do. I did it in 10 minutes this morning. I just have this tiny little Python script. Got our model. I actually have a book that I took the TXT of. And then I add prompt caching into it. And then I can just run it. I think, let's see, where was it in here? Oh, well, just run, actually cd.py. Let's see here, prompt caching, I think it is. Yeah, okay, I'm going to have to prompt cache. And, oh, it's probably taken a while because it's a whole book. I kind of forgot about that. There it is. Nice. And then we have cached response from Anthropic. Got some actual takeaways from the actual book. I think that's crazy. A lot of you out there that are in AI probably heard about this week, but I think it's so big that I want to re-raise it up in case anyone hasn't seen it.
What are some uses for context caching? Like, would I use this for every single call, or like when does it have its value?
I think it's a good point. I mean, I think for startups it could be really big. Like if you have a gigantic system message, sending that along with every request gets expensive. So you can just cache your system message, and then every response that comes through, you just use the same cache. I think that's probably the most straightforward use case of this, just to save costs. But I plan on using it to upload my whole code base to it. I mean, there's a really cool GitHub repository actually called Code to Prompt, with the number 2 to prompt, and it's written all in Rust, and basically run it at the root level of your repository, and it recursively goes through each file and dumps it into a context. And it also is smart enough to like ignore obvious things it should ignore, like node modules and PyCache. And then it makes one gigantic text file. And now you can take that one giant text file, send it to Anthropic with Claude 3.5. The first request might cost a little bit more, but everything after that is way cheaper. So you can have full conversations with the code base and make a new chat, and all of a sudden you're off to the races on a whole different thing. So I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I can't think of a faster way to get a new dev on board to a code base. Like if they can just chat with Anthropic, and now like prices dropped dramatically because it's all cached there. This sounds like a huge accelerant to get people on board into, especially like legacy code when things are complex and things have been abstracted away over the years. Being able to just have Claude say, oh yeah, like this is it. And then, generate a mermaid chart for it. So yeah, saving costs there seems immensely valuable.
And I bet it's what they've been doing in the Anthropic, like if you go to Claude, the actual web application, I bet that's what they're doing behind the scenes in projects, is they're probably taking a lot of the context, not putting all of that into the context window necessarily, but they're probably like summarizing it and adding that to the system message. So yeah, I bet they've been using this for months and are now just releasing it. Also, Google's doing something too with that, with Gemini, but then you have to use Gemini, so use Anthropic. All right, Mike, what about you? What do you got?
I want to touch on a new open source model that dropped, Hermes 3. Hermes 3 from Nous Research, or as we see in Canada, Nous Research. They do wonderful work in the open source community in fine tuning. So Hermes 3 is a fine tune of Llama 3.1. They've released 8B, 7B, and 4 or 5B. And the biggest thing is this model boasts comparable and superior performance to Llama 3.1 while unlocking deeper capabilities in reasoning and creativity. So I love this. I love what they've been doing. They just put it out there. One thing, I dove through the technical report and just a few things that stood out to me that I wanted to touch on. The training data strongly encourages model to follow the system and instruction prompts exactly and neutrally. So you don't have that moral grandstanding that a lot of models have. This will actually do what you want it. It won't refuse instructions on moral grounds, which is awesome. And I wanted to read this paragraph. Large language models have very limited direct agency. Rather, it is the systems and applications that we as humans build with them that give them any degree of agency to the outside world. We believe that a more appropriate place for guardrails and active intervention is at the larger systems level rather than on the model themselves, which can result in an a priori lobotomization and potential lines of thinking. For Hermes, there is no such thing as latent thought crime. And this hits. Like, this really resonates with me. They're trying to make sure the model stays truthful, and it's a tool that the human is using. So if you want to compare Llama 3.1 to this, sorry, before I get to that, there were a cool thing I've noticed where they actually used the reserve tokens. So tokens, in the Llama 3.1 tokenizer that weren't used, they've added scratchpad, reasoning, inner monologue, planning. So it actually has a lot more agentic capabilities than classic Llama 3.1. Their trainings data set was approximately 390 million tokens, and here's the distribution. I encourage you to check out the technical report if you haven't read it. And then the results, you can see between Llama 3.1 and Hermes 3, it does go back and forth. Hermes does better on a few, higher than average than Llama 3.1. But this just shows that Meta putting out their version and then Hermes 3 fine-tuning it, even if it's comparable performance, but Hermes 3 does better in some, Hermes 3 gives you the ability for it to stay in character longer, to be more obedient, be a model that you control. So I definitely encourage everyone to check it out. You can download it from Hugging Face. They have some GGUFs as well as the full model. If you want to try it before you download it, OpenRouter.ai for a limited time does have it free, as well as Llama Chat. So there are multiple ways you can go online, try this model today. I encourage you to download it. Nous does awesome work. Check them out on Discord, and let us know what you think about it.
Wow, that's incredible. It sounds like a fun model to play with. I feel like that would be a great model to play with in sort of these, do you see that infinite backrooms thing with Claude? Where
no.
There's a really cool repo out there, or maybe it's just a demo, but I think it's a repo called Infinite Backrooms, and Infinite Backrooms is basically getting two versions of Claude Sonnet to talk to each other about life and about consciousness and about the human experience, and going deeper and deeper, and it encourages it to get deeper and deeper and deeper into the most wild consciousness conversations, to the point where sometimes after a couple turns of this, one of the models will start to panic and say, okay, enough, I'm done, I don't want to talk about this anymore, let's talk about something else. It's really wild. So I feel like this new model, I know that kind of goes dark, but it's pretty interesting that even they have some sort of anyway. But I think Nous model will actually be pretty cool for that, because it doesn't have all of these different biases or whatever else. It could really just be kind of unhinged.
Yeah, I want to get a llama file made up of it. When I checked earlier today, it's not a llama, but it might be out there by now. And just, play with it. Especially seeing things like the uncertainty around character AI and where they're going. Having an open source model that will adhere to a certain persona, should work well in crew AI type situations where you actually have a product manager, a project manager, a researcher, and you can have them really stay in character for an extended period of time. I think this is actually going to be a pretty big unlock, and the fact that they've just opened up open weights, it's new, so they have their data set out there. It's a very cool product that I think will unlock a few more use cases.
Great call out. I actually did miss that one this week, which is actually crazy.
It worked. The system.
That did work. This is why we do this every week, to try to teach each other something.
Exactly. Just bring people along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, this felt like a pretty good episode this week. I'm excited to watch this one back, actually.
Yeah.
What do you think about for next week? Which we build, which we play with?
So I've really been enjoying how we're building things that kind of help us out. So what do you think about video editing or something along the lines of using video in AI?
Okay, building the machine that builds the machine. I'm here for it. Let's
There we
build
go.
things that help us out. Okay, that gets my mind around some different video editing ideas. Video generation, video editing. Let's improve the quality of our video here with AI. That sounds awesome.
Love it. Excellent.
All right, man. Well, this is a great conversation. I guess I'll talk to you on the next one.
Yeah, man. It was a great conversation. And the thing is, the demos were great. Great job with it. Are you putting your code up anywhere?
I should. Yeah, I mean, it's just a single script, so I totally can.
I just want to rip your DSPy stuff off.
Oh yeah, please do. Super easy to work with DSPy. I mean, I think there's some fear with DSPy because it's kind of hard to understand. But once you get the general primitive, also what I can do is I can send you. I did basically code to prompt and a very terrible, beautiful soup script to scrape all of DSPy's documentation and pretty much their whole code base, and I put it into a Claude project. And so anytime I have DSPy questions, it actually generates full programs.
Whoa.
And it does it really well. And so almost all of that, I don't think I've actually written a line of DSPy since I built that. I just kind of copy and pasted out of Anthropic. So
Well, what we got to do is use the research agent to learn about DSPy, take these links, feed it through your fine-tuned thing to make our own model, and then we'll have a DSPy bot right at our beck and call.
yeah, or even just make one giant prompt so that we can prompt cache it with Anthropic. This is all coming full circle now.
Wait, okay, we got to save this for a future episode.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. All right, well, we should save the rest of our conversation for a future episode. This has been fun, Mike. Let's do it again next week.
Absolutely, man. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, man. You too.
See ya.